Good evening. It is April 22nd, 2025. It is 5:30 p.m. We are in the Veterans Conference Room, Mandan City Hall, and this is a special meeting working session of the Mandan City Commission. Laura, could you please take the roll call?
Commissioners Heinchan. Here. Rohr.
Here.
Braun. Here. Schober. Here. Mayor Freilich.
Here. I'll let us stand for the pledge of allegiance. Laura, could you like to lead us?
You bet. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this could be well, I guess we need to review the agenda. So commissioners, you've had a chance to review the agenda. There's one item on there for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Heinchan to accept the agenda and a second by Commissioner Rohr. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Heinchan.
Yes.
Rohr.
Yes.
Braun.
Yes.
Schober.
Yes.
Mayor Freilich.
Yes. Okay, now on to new business. This is long-term financial planning. Everyone has, I don't know how to quite classify this, but I'm going to say this. This is, we have to decide wants and needs tonight. And everybody needs to be candid, say their piece. Jim, would you like to kick off the process, and then we're going to turn it over to Greg and Justin?
Yeah, so really, the idea for tonight is we have an accumulation of the 5 years worth of requests for personnel, machinery, equipment, and also public facilities. Kind of like where we're going, where the ask tonight would be if there are priorities that the commission would like to say these are items that we need to kind of be prioritized in the next, specifically for 2026, but also looking for the next 5 years. We're looking at after we get some ideas on what priorities from the commission would like to see, and then we kind of turn it loose to Greg and Justin on the finance end and try and figure out how to pay for a lot of these priorities. This is a little bit different than in the past where it's been, all right, we have $10. Where do you want to spend that $10? What we want to do is identify what those critical needs are that you see, you think are pressing, and then how do we fund them? We know that, like I said, between now and we will come back maybe for our last long range financial planning, hopefully on May 27th. I think that's the fourth Tuesday in May. In the meantime, Greg, Justin, the finance committee will kind of get together and see where we obviously know that with the legislature in session right now, funding is going to be pretty tight. The 3%, not really budgetary caps, but 3% spending caps are 99.9% going to be in place. That does not leave us with a lot of additional money to pay for people based on the general fund and machinery and equipment, and pick your favorites. Things are going to be pretty tight. But we also have different funding sources, such as we are allowed by law to peel some money off of the streetlight utility fund gross revenue, the landfill account, the water and sewer utility fund, potentially adding on the special assessment. Right now, we normally tag on about 5% on special assessment projects to account for engineering's time and efforts and pick your favorite in that. So again, really a practice we like to do. We have sales tax that we are already tasking. 75% of our sales tax collections are used to offset general fund spending. So we are getting kind of tapped out unless there are some new revenue sources that are identified, like such as your utility funds. We're all dipping into the utility fund gross receipts a little little bit to, again, offset general fund expenses. So, but those are additional funding sources. But I think our first step tonight would be identifying those priorities and those needs the commission sees as necessary moves, and then we take it back to the finance area, the budget committee, and see if we can cobble together the stones to fund what those priorities are.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that you said a lot of my talking points.
Sorry about that.
Would like to add that we're not asking the department managers to represent the requests, but to, again, like Jim said, have the commissioners look over the requests and ask questions of staff and even talk amongst each other and being able to develop and determine what those priorities are. It does not mean that as the priorities are kind of determined and vetted out, that the resources are there to pay for it. It's just to determine what are the wishes of the commission, what are the priorities that you would like to see. So the Budget and Finance Committee can take a look at our base operations, determine what other funding options are out there, so we can make recommendations back to the City Commission in a working session on May 27th.
Are there any questions of Greg, Justin, myself?
Just one comment.
Yep.
You know, this here, what we're doing right now looks forward. What I don't see happening is looking backward. What happens if we had to have a planning committee said, okay, next year, something happened, we had to cut $10 million out of the city budget. How do we do it? Do we ever have a thought on how do we address a deficit? What will we cut? What services we look at? How do we do that? That's the opposite side of the spectrum. We're looking on the other side right now. I just want to make that comment.
Agree. Unfortunately, in the last 25 years, we haven't had to do that. But it's something I think we did ask in early to mid 2000s for many of you were not here at that time, but we did ask for budgets that were reduced by, I think, 5 or 10% at one point in time. Where would you make those cuts?
Well, I just lived through a city down in Kansas where that happened. And we had to meet, and I had to cut 3 officers from the department. I mean, we went through 2 years. That was pretty tough. And it can happen, but I'm just saying, you always got to keep that in the back of your mind that if things go great, the way they are, fine. But always have to be alluded to the possibility. Certain things can happen economically.
Absolutely, and I think pretty confident in our group here and our team here that we'd be able to manage through those. It won't be easy, or something like that wouldn't be easy, but we would come up with what you have to do. We do that. So appreciate the comments. Legislatively, again, what we're hearing is 3% caps, and there's still a lot of discussion, I think, on how that computation is made. But I think the latest and greatest would be you take your general fund expenditures and you increase them by 3% and kind of go from there. And, that process doesn't yield us a whole lot of money in the world. I think 3% of roughly a $9 million general fund expense is $270,000, which it doesn't. That's a pretty minimal cost of living increase for employees across the board, if that's what we're going to do. So again, what we're hearing too is that the 3% caps are probably going into place, and let's try it for 2 years. And if we need to adjust, come back in 2 years at the legislative session and see, tell us how it went.
Jim, on the, one of the bigger issues that affect us budgetarily too is the medical insurance part.
Right.
Big thing there is that built into this thing as well? Do we have any forecast 3 to 5 years where that may be?
We budget 10% increase every year,
Yes.
and if it falls below that, that money is retained in the general fund. Last year, I think we were at below 3 or 4%, I think. Right before that, we were 6.5% above. So it has a way of evening itself out. But yeah,
Yes, that's
If we, when our employees.
So that bothers me anyway.
Yeah, benefits, we figure that if there's an increase on a cost of living increase, we also have to budget for that increase in FICA, increase the retirement contribution, and we also look at health benefits. All that plays in that world. So
The other thing that we budget for is, we don't budget for vacancies for personnel. We assume that we're gonna be 100% fully staffed. So the general fund does realize a pretty good budgetary savings by the end of the year because of vacant positions or new positions that haven't been filled.
You have the 20-year person that leaves and you have the big differential between the salary they're paying them and the new person coming in.
Yeah. And certainly that general fund savings is a windfall, and we don't budget for that. But it's nice to be able to pay for things that there might be some budgetary constraints for.
So with that, we also have another revenue stream, and that would be the half-cent sales tax, which of that 3 cents can be used for police and fire buildings or vehicles and city hall accessibility aids. We have had some discussion on whether that 3 cents could be used to help fund new emergency services personnel, police and fire, after positions created after 1/1/2025. There's a lot of discussion going on about the public transportation piece of this right now. That's what we're waiting to figure out, but we have not funded any of those emergency services personnel out of that 3 cents at this time, because we don't think that would be prudent to do, because we don't know if that funding source is available right now. Again, the way the ordinance was written and passed was police and fire buildings and vehicles and city hall accessibility. So it did not include personnel. It's a change we think we may like to make, but at this point in time, it's not there. So that's where we're at. Again, we've not come for that in here. Nor do we know if we could fund all of the requests for police and fire out of that fund without there being nothing left for vehicles and buildings. But that is a potential funding source out there. Get that one?
Yes.
So in the, again, 2026 budget on the personnel side, we're looking for, it was presented on the assessing side, another property appraiser for the next 5 years. That's one position, not 5 new positions. We're looking at a potential accountant in the 2029 and 2030 budget for finance. Streets, again, looking at additional personnel of 1 person in 26, 2 in 27, another person in 30. That is mostly due to growth in the number of miles of streets, and also when we anticipate getting responsibility for maintenance on the Memorial Highway, which I think is probably 2029. If we've got construction in 2025, 2026, probably 2027, finish up in 2028. We're going to have that responsibility 28, 29 in that area. Computer information specialist, I think Carrie is realizing that this is quite an undertaking for one person at this time. We do have, did interview, I think 5 interns, and they extended an offer to 1 intern on board this summer. And another engineering tech in engineering and engineering.
Question, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, just so I understand now. In the assessing department, real property appraiser, how many appraisers do we have presently?
There's 3 of us. And then our administrative assistant does a little bit of appraising.
When was the last time you had When was the last time you hired?
Added a position before my time.
Okay, so quite some time.
Yes.
That's
What's
good
the
to know.
what's the backlog look like? I know you presented this. but
Yes,
Just,
I'm trying to remember, the original plan that was set for the city is to review the city every 7 years. And at the rate we're going with the personnel we have, we think it would take 12 years to go through the whole city and do all the measuring and reviewing. So that's kind of the time frame that we calculated to complete it with the staff we have now. And then we do have summer help. That's just part-time that comes in and helps us with that project. So, but they're not certified or anything like that. They just help with some of the data entry and actually going out and physically measuring. And
Well, one thing I look at maybe too is, how long has it been since we put anybody in the position? That's important.
thank you for asking.
how does that return on the city? If you cut that back to 7 years instead of 12, how does that affect the city?
It affects us by not having as accurate data as we could have, which in the end affects down the road, are we assessing fairly? Like, for example, Brenda was running some queries today, and you can run different reports and things that look out of place or there's something wrong. She found in the last couple of weeks, she found 2 garages that we haven't been assessing, for example.
Okay, so that's like, does that equate to additional revenue for the city?
If we find stuff that hasn't been assessed, that's correct. Or like if we're doing stuff in the summertime and we come up and we don't have the basement finish on this house, that would add to it. But there are times where people take things out and we reduce it, or we get to a property and it's in very poor condition. And so some go up, some go down. It's more about being fair and having the correct data to start with so that you are doing it fair. I can't say that we're gonna gain a lot of money.
I think that brings up a good question, though, is if we find a structure that isn't currently in the tax base, in the computation of the new 3% limit, that count as new construction, I think, so that we could add that in. Which,
that would,
one of those things that we have to work on.
it would be one of those things, we'll see what they do, but normally it's just a bad assessment. It's not new construction. But what are their definitions going to be? That's our calculation.
We'll just have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, if we find out, in my mind, if we find out it's something that was built 10 years ago, to me, that's not new construction, but we'll have to wait for the definition from the state.
And the computer information system specialist, that's in addition to Carrie.
Mhm.
Yes. Yep, so full-time starting next year, 2029, a second person.
So there'd be a total of 3 in the IT department. By
3 altogether, yes.
You handle the, all of the digital equipment for, you handle much of the stuff that has to do with computer with the police department as well?
Captain Miller is still doing quite a bit, but yes, I have been helping them with some things here
Because
and
he's
there,
gonna be retiring all these
replacing
days
equipment.
too, and they'll have to be taken over by somebody.
Right, and that's why I put a second person in 2029, because I figured at that point, maybe Captain Miller would be looking to retire. So, yes.
Any other questions on the assessing finance, streets, grounds maintenance before we move into the other general fund folks on the police and fire? So moving into those, we've got a quartermaster and fleet manager, which is a new position in the PD. We've got the reserve officers, 5 of them, and a domestic violence detective. I think this is a current grant position that may move always has the possibility of not being a grant funded position, right?
The grant is running out on it and they are not going to renew our grant. We've had it for 9 years. Typically, you get a 3-year and then renewal for 3.
Okay.
And we actually got an extra 3 years out of it. So this one will be coming on to
Effective the end of this year.
for October 1.
So we
So
would,
we did budget to pay from October to January this year. And the reserves, there's 4 of them. The other notation on the reserve officers is those can be volunteer positions. You do not have to be paid. So what you see on there is if they would be paid because they're capped at 40 hours a month per officer, they would help out with special events, extra security at special events and do different things to free up our other officers that are out there patrolling. So the 4 community engagement officers, which are the granted positions, would utilize them to be a force multiplier at the special events.
Chief, do you feel there's people that are interested in being a volunteer on that side, or that would have to be, that it would most likely be paid?
I think that there would be people that would volunteer. I could probably name about 10 people that took my ears throughout my tenure here, that if we ever had a reserve unit, that they would love to do it. Not necessarily be paid for it. Now, they would still have to be covered under workman's comp and you know, when they're working, if they get injured, so they're covered with that stuff. But to be paid an hourly wage, I think there are people out there who do it. You know, my preference would to be paid them because then, you know, it keeps people interested in units like that. You don't have a lot of turnover, and you don't have to come back and visit it again a couple of years down the road. So, well, they weren't paid, and now they're probably should be paid, especially if they're providing security events and stuff like that. And there's, you know, paid security guards down there from another avenue, you know, but they can be a volunteer position. And I do think that we could get some very, very good people to do it for that means about.
So can you groom ones from the officer for a career?
That could be done. It definitely could be done. What we're seeing with most of the cadets in our cadet post is that they go on to college and stuff like that, stay as a cadet till they're 21, and then look to go and get sponsored in the academy and never reach that reserve officer status. Young people typically don't like the reserve positions. That's usually for more seasoned individuals or former police officers that would like to stay in the game. Something for them to do. That's who I anticipate would be looking at those positions.
I want to comment, that, an increase in manpower is going to be very much incumbent on the population increases, crime trend increases like that, but if things are fairly static, this is kind of maybe a little over expectation in manpower at this point in time. So, because that, when you had police officers, especially you had the grant stuff, you had at home, you're looking at a lot of money to continue at a certain level, but this level, depending on where we are, 35 years down the road, population and calls for service and that type of thing. So it's not static.
That's a good question, Andrew. Do you have any statistics at this point, early statistics? As to what percentage of population has grown, say, last 18 months? Top of my head, no. Are we still looking at assuming 1,000 a year? So if I start at 2025 and say we're at 25,000, 26, at the end of 26, are we gonna be at 26,000? Is that overly ambitious?
I don't believe our growth rate's 1,000 people per year, but the numbers that I presented instead of this average, I believe are still accurate.
Was it 1.8%? So on 25,000 people,
Some
2%?
450,
Okay, so it's
500.
The DOJ recommends, I know, Commissioner Rohr, you like to see staffing studies, which are more expensive, more in depth, and you could find out that you need more, but the DOJ recommends 2 officers per 1,000. It's kind of their guideline they've had. It's just an easy number to see. At that, we should be 50. We're currently with 4 officers, we're at 46. So which is helping out tremendously. Like I said, the reserve officers would be a supplemental force. It's not going to be the police force. They cannot go out on their own. They have to be supervised by another officer, but they would be more impactful for like the 4th of July parade, buggies and blues, to where I don't have to necessarily pull officers off the street to get the manpower and the optic of security in an event for security safe, for event safety. And they also don't accumulate overtime, which is another thing that when I backfill a shift, or let's say we have a major crime scene, we could use these reserve officers for perimeter security, so I don't have to call a shift in that worked the night before to cover perimeter security.
Would they be eligible, qualified to do any school resource backfill?
No, they would not, for the mere fact that they have to be directly supervised. I know there has been discussions about what direct supervision is. My idea of direct supervision is another officer within seconds of them, to me, is direct supervisor. Some people say a phone call is a direct supervision. I don't agree with that. Especially somebody that's not fully trained, hasn't been through a field training program and stuff like that. It's not fair to put them in a liability situation like that. And it also puts a huge liable situation for the city if that officer acts and they just say, well, they stuck me here and I had no training whatsoever. Once they link the city to that, then the pocketbook's open.
In volunteer fire service.
Yeah, mine is within reasonable eyesight. You know, if you're 15, 20 feet away from me, that is, in my opinion, direct supervision. It also depends on how crowded the area is. If you're down at Dykstra Park during, Buggies and Blues, it's probably more of a 2 to 5 feet because of the crowds and stuff like that. You don't want a reserve officer wandering off by themselves without the ability of another officer being out with direct supervision.
Well, they
More
can,
so aimed at show of force for
It is.
deterrent of the
Yep.
response.
We call it force multiplier.
I probably won't be here as police commissioner, but I would hope that with other commissioners that if you're going to come in and ask for other officers, that you would say, okay, here's what we're not doing. This is what we're not providing. We're getting behind. But if you're not, then of course we have to question whether or not you need an additional officer. And of course, the other thing is how much more you do less specialized as opposed to your basic line services. And so those all have to be a purview for a future commission to consider as to how many more officers you need. But that's up to you, the chief, to justify that.
And as cities grow, and departments grow, you do see more specialization because generalization is very hard to train a one police officer how to generalize everything. So like for detective purposes, as the departments grow, you'll see homicide units, you'll see crimes against children, domestic violence, all the big cliche names will start to pop up, and they're needed because it's so much information for one individual. I couldn't imagine somebody being an auto theft detective, domestic violence detective, and a homicide detective homicide alone is such a specialized, job. And the training is so expensive that it's really hard to get all your detectives trained that way. That's why the departments do that. It's easier to generalize with your street level officers than it is your detective units.
Oh, yeah, well, you got the time bureau to bring in too, for sort of specialization things that you have to contend with there.
Right, and then there'll be, like, I can't see any time in my lifetime where the SWAT team would be a full-time SWAT team, or you would see a full-time drone unit. Where if we do breach into that drone as a first responder, then you need drone pilots, but they don't have to be police officers. We can fly the drone and get information back to dispatch on what they see. So there are positions that would turn specialized, but not necessarily law enforcement officer needed for it. The only caveat would be is if there would be something where the state, and I don't anticipate this, just setting through legislative sessions, would approve like red light cameras or something like that, because then it would need a actual police officer to view the violation in order to write the ticket. But I don't see our state going in that direction anytime soon.
But in the realm of the services provided by the city, we gotta remember, as commissioner, it's tough for me because I'm in the police realm most of the time, that we are in competition, police department, with other entities here, they can't, the city has service department, fire department, all these other have needs to provide certain level of services, and there's only so many dollars to go around to pay for whatever personnel is needed for that.
Okay, with that said, let's move on to administrative assistant. That is in the fire department or the police department?
Fire.
So we've got, I think our goal in discussions last summer were, how do we get Station 2 up to a staffing level that is, we're fully staffed. I think we're hiring 2 people this year, which we have on board and going. This would include next year 3 people, 3 firefighters, which would bring us to full staff, 2 stations. Correct? Or pretty darn close?
Pretty darn close.
Okay. And with that, I think the request is for an admin system.
At that time, Chief Woods, how many employees would you have? How many firefighters?
After if we hired the 3 in 2020, today we have 18 flying firefighters. Get 3 more 2026 plus the administrative system. Self and Shane want to call.
Okay. The captain promotion hires, that's not in this year, so let's stick to this year.
Yeah, I think that just a brief note on the 2027 through 2030 budgets are for in the fire world is trying to get some staff and anticipation of a construction of Station 3.
Yes.
So that is where you see the increase. I think along with increase in staff, you have increase in management positions to manage that staff. If I'm remembering correctly.
Correct. So
The fund again, business development, looking at in 2029 potential additional staff, water and sewer. We're looking at sludge. How to say that? I think that's in the water side, the sludge, the building worker for water treatment plant. Correct. Jared had a commitment tonight. I don't know if this is yours, Ryan. Dwayne on the call it the water squeezer out of the plant. Library, looking at a technical services coordinator and community education coordinator and early literacy coordinator as new positions in the coming years.
Or what is the technical? You got to refresh on that.
So right now we have Susan, who is our technical services associate. And she is basically in charge of all cataloging of the books. She is part-time, 20, well, right now she's 30 plus hours. But looking at reducing that and possibly retiring within a year or 2 or 3. In my head, I just want to always be planning that we might have a position that we need that's available.
What's your staff over there right now?
We have 15.
15? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, any questions? Barb, do you have a potential revenue source for those, or is that expected to be?
Not in particular, but we can use some of our passport monies that we are bringing in. Can also be used towards that.
So you think you have enough existing
Not all
revenue
of it, but
sources
yes.
to
Mhm.
pay for that position?
Yeah. Because this would be, right, like I said, we have that position, a technical services associate, so it would be bumping it up to a coordinator and then full-time. So it would be taking what already we have predicted, but just adding.
Okay, so how does this work with the county? Is this the full number and you're gonna present that to the county also? Or-
Yes.
So, and the county has what percentage responsibility?
26%.
It's based on population.
Yeah, between the county and the city.
It's like-
Email that into Barb,
Yeah,
would
it's
be
one way street.
the 83,000 that represents moving Susan's position to a full-time and then bringing in another part-time.
No, it would just be, again, this is anticipating, much like I did when Belle was looking at retiring. I didn't know when she was going to.
Okay.
But it's anticipating that it may happen for Susan, within the next year or more. So I just want to be prepared for that.
We're paying Susan 40 grand, just
Right.
using a number. So is this 83,000? Should it be another 40,000? Or is it the full 82? Because we're already paying Susan.
No, it would be
Less 26.
Oh, I can work with Barb to get the net
Okay.
for that.
Thanks.
These increases, are you looking to increase your services?
yes,
Is this why you're doing this here, to increase your service,
yes,
to maintain current level?
not to maintain current.
Not to increase, okay.
Or could you take a moment or two to inform everybody here on over at Rapid? I'm going to ask Mom as well.
I was shocked, to be honest with you. So in March, we did 310 passports. In 2019, this is just to put it into perspective, I think it was 2019, we did the whole year 485 or something along that line. So I'm not saying every month is going to be 310, but we're already above what we have done the first quarter of last year. Yeah. I mean, we brought in $7,000 for passports just in March. That's photos and passports processing.
Okay, any further questions from commission on the personnel requests? Getting into the machinery and equipment, we've got vehicle replacements and assessing. I think we've gone through those explanations before, so don't need to do it again.
Jim, real quick, maybe for a visual, you'll see highlighted in green as you go through those vehicles that are additions. Everything else is replacement, just for an easy visual.
Okay, so all the vehicles you see in the general fund from Guess we've got vehicles and we've got comprehensive plan and we've got a number of items in the IT world for cybersecurity and just the kind of the routine stuff, I would say.
Correct, yes.
Right, Garrett? Did we, are we doing another round of dash cams on 59? Is that?
Yeah, what, I actually just sent Amy Oster because Motorola reached out to us and I got a hold of it today, a agreement that would extend our current body cams and dash cam at the current rate that we are right now instead of an increase.
So this is just a continuation, but.
Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
continuation, but we might be able to get that number down.
Yeah.
So once I get all that, get Amy to look at it, I'll fire it off to you, Jim, so you can look it over and then.
Equipment on the 4 reserves, if I take 63 divided by 4, I get 15,750 per officer. Is that?
Correct, that would give, that'd cover the guns, the radios are the biggest expense, we have to have radios. The body cams are included, everything's included in that, except for uniforms.
Question for my own would be.
Jim, you can be a reserve if you want.
You don't want me. I'm gonna guarantee you that. Just a question on volunteers carrying a gun.
Mhm.
Is that normal? Is
That's-
that not an issue?
Nope, they've got to go through 80 hours of training before they can take the certification test. They have to be a certified reserve officer in the state. And so part of that is spending time at the range and qualifying. Plus, they have a renewal of 30 hours every 3 years that they have to do, which includes monthly firearms training. They would have to do all the training that the regular officers would do, and just to keep their certification up.
So that $16,000, probably 5,000-6,000 is great.
Roughly, yes, and it's a one-time hit for the unit.
Yeah.
On the canine, it says new, is that an additional dog or are you placing an old one?
Our 2 dogs are coming to end of their working life. So they'll be retiring into canine heaven, if that's what you want to call it, where they get to eat normal food and be dogs for the remainder of their life. The first one will be to replace Cooper. Cooper is going to be at that time about 9 years old. And his street life is, he's already reduced his street life already. Medvi's still pretty active. He's about a year and a half younger than Cooper. So this is anticipating that Medvi would also then retire the following year. And then we'd be looking to get two new canine officers if the current ones do not want, which I know Sergeant Scher will not take another dog. He's over investigations right now. So we have at least one new canine. And then Officer Black, she is now on the community engagement team, which having the canine will work very well with that because she's going to be out and about helping officers as she's working. So
basically you're retiring 2 dogs and place them in 27 and 28.
correct.
Again, all of, as Justin said, all of the items that you're looking at on the top of this page are replacements. They're not new. If you want to specifically ask on those, feel free to. I think again, at the bottom of their cemetery, we've got a skid steer loader editions coming in 2028. Again, green, otherwise we're replacing mowers. Dump trucks for public works, I think, again, are in anticipation of Memorial Highway. Getting those plus some replacements of some of the existing fleet that's probably 25, 30 years old.
Yeah, the single axles, the 2 that would be replaced, one's a 92 and one's a 96. So we're looking at some trucks with some serious time.
Shane, are your forecast here on equipment, is that basically based upon past experience, just a life as given by companies, or what criteria necessarily really tells you, well, I got to have the street sweeper replaced in 28?
Yeah, just, from past experience, a lot of this that was built here is from, the superintendents and the old department head, kind of what they saw, anticipated, what the city's gonna need and how soon we got to place it. I know one thing, we talked a little bit about the strip. There's good replacements in here and there could possibly be more, but right now I think we got an okay with this 5 years.
Historical data is.
Yep. I mean, replacing 30-year-old trucks, I think should be a little sooner.
Yeah.
Some of the data what I would be bringing in here would be a little bit faster turnover on fleet replacement. You know, a 92 and a 96. We may have had more in repairs, you know, over the last 30 years than a new vehicle would have cost. But
Are these a combination of purchases and leases or?
most of these would all be purchased.
Okay, and this is not a lease plan, maybe you're presenting here for these individual, like the street sweeper, you're not planning on leasing it, but.
No, that'd be a purchase.
Purchase, okay.
One of the things that we talked about in the finance department, in order to cash flow some of these big spends for equipment, that we could possibly, if leasing's not an option, to just look at bank financing. Yes, you're gonna pay interest, but you're gonna spread that cost over the useful life of that, equipment.
Yeah.
But by doing that, you're also going to cash flow better in your funds.
Commissioner Flores, just real quick, to put little context, we did it with the superintendents when I was at Public Works, go through the matrix and we started to evaluate the equipment based on different criteria and different categories. But we quickly learned that anything over 20 years of service, it was automatically placed on the schedule. Interesting. So the majority of this is 20 years.
I think almost everything I saw.
So this is just to maintain the current level of service that we presently have.
Okay, any question on general fund equipment?
Fair, Commissioners, just a couple of things. I talked to Justin and Greg about this today. Assessor Mark Lee and I have been utilizing the Eagle View platform, which is an aerial and open image that's taken. It can be used for plan review, it can be used for assessing, it can be used for incident response. There's a lot of different utility that the tool has that we probably realize the full potential that it has, to be honest. But basically, it's a top-down image site we can take to measure properties. It's certified for assessing purposes, so they're able to make some assessment of property from their computer. It's also just helpful for having a nice picture of Mandan even every few years. We would like to do that again, and this is not on the list. Cost is between $8,000 and $10,000 per year for 3 years, for a total of $24,000 to $30,000. We intend to procure that image in 2026 and pay for it in 2026 and 2027. So again, it would be between $8,000 and $10,000 per year. I believe between at least planning and assessing, we've probably saved that much money by not having to go out and look at stuff.
I mean, it helps.
Yeah.
But I would also like to say that every department is using it. I mean, Jordan's using it all the time. I know utility billing, they're in there sometimes too. I mean, we're all using it, so it's more than just our 2 offices too.
And there's some other stuff that comes with it that would be invaluable if we needed it. For example, as a customer of Eagle View, if we were to have a qualifying incident in our community, such as a tornado or something like that, they would come through and they would take a picture of the city or a damaged area. There's a tool that if we were to take a second picture that they can run, and because there's LiDAR, which is kind of a point cloud, that's how they actually get measurements. They send out a signal and everything that it bounces off of becomes the measurement data, basically, in short. And that tool basically says, here's the difference between these LiDAR dots and the new LiDAR dots, and here's everything that's different. So it can detect additions, it could detect demolitions and other things like that. And just sort of be a really easy tool to say, here's what's different between the 2023 shot and the 2026 shot. I think it's valuable just for the purposes of knowing how much of a hindrance it is to know about our past when previous aerials were taken in 1937 and 72. If one wonders what happened between 1933 and 1957. I think so having a nice image taken every few years would be good. On that front, we are exploring ways that the city and the Metropolitan Planning Organization could possibly align our procurement so that rather than us taking a picture for the MPO and us taking a picture for the cities, we would just maybe take one picture. So that's one thing that we're looking into to see if that federal funding could possibly be used for at least the area, which we don't believe it's going to be used to acquire the ACO view. But that's the way that we could provide some external funding for that we are looking to. If we don't hit it for 26, then maybe we can sync up better if it is for 2029. It's something that we are working towards coordinating. I also just wanted to mention the planning department did also request a comprehensive plan. That would be the second thing on your sheet here. It would be my recommendation that the city get through its system master plans prior to the comprehensive plan. The plan that we're working on is we do need to have a relevant plan in order for my position to really exist. You wouldn't want to make decisions and things like that based off. Is it reflective of the community's values and growth issues and things like that? So we can work with the one that we have. It wouldn't be a best practice to go into, say, 2030 off of the land use plan for 2015, for example, because development trends change. However, like I said, I think it would be wise for the city to growth constraints and things like that relevant to sanitary sewer, water distribution, and things like that prior to going into a comprehensive plan, of course, so that we know, okay, how much should we prioritize growth in certain directions? Because if one plan says green light and another plan says $2 million to get through this light, then that would be good. So possibly something that would kick back on our previous meetings. We talked about the prioritization of those system master plans and however those are prioritized would affect the kind of the work product of the comprehensive plan. On a similar front to the aerial imagery, the transportation planning portion of the comprehensive plan is eligible for federal grant dollars. So if we are able to, and something that we are working towards, is kind of trying to synchronize the Metropolitan Planning Organization's planning grant. They receive federal funds for transportation planning purposes to see if there's a way that we could possibly have the city's land use and then other comprehensive planning components paid for by the city and have the transportation aspect paid for with the cost share with the MPO. Simply surprise information to you, but it's something that we are working towards. So it's possible that there are Metropolitan Planning Organization dollars that would maybe bring down what you see budgeted for the comprehensive plan. I just wanted to mention that. So it wouldn't be much, but it would be everything counts right. So maybe $50,000-$60,000 coming outside would be helpful.
Andrew, on this legal stuff,
Yes.
what was it dollars for that 10 grand a year?
Yeah, we're getting two estimates. There's for a 3-inch resolution. So it would basically say that, the picture's 3 inches accurate. Taking the space is pretty good. That would be $10,000, $30,000 over the course of 3 years, or $10,000 per year. The 1-inch resolution is actually cheaper, so it would be as accurate as my AirPods. It's just not certified yet. The technology has not been around long enough for different industries to endorse it. So they're charging $8,000 for that per year for 20,000.
So Jim, Mitch, Ryan, we've been attending this multi-hazard mitigation plan stuff for 3 meetings so far. And we're planning for the next 5 years, but a lot of this planning would facilitate, correct me if I'm wrong, enhanced FEMA financial assistance, should there be, say, because we also lie in the drainage area of what, five different dams?
Because our county does, yeah.
Yeah, so, but if we should be unfortunate enough to fall victim to a tornado or a severe wind shear or something where we needed additional money, do you think that this Eagle View, should it be put to use by police and fire and streets, contribute to our ability to get more money? Disaster maybe, or not?
I would think it's certainly the more accurate information you have. I think, like Andrew said, that the tornado comes through and wipes out our town. We can call up the Eagle View software. Here's what was there, and here's how much that property is worth at within 5-10 minutes. It's very valuable.
Anytime natural disasters like with the storms, any data or anything we can have, prove what was there before is always useful.
I wanted to mention too, there are strings attached to the free aerial, right? Like it's not going to be every circumstance. And I tend to be someone who kind of falls outside of policies apparently. But if it's like an F3 tornado, for example, then it's free. An F2 on you kind of type thing. And if we have an earthquake, then if it's like a 6.0, then they'll do one for free. But if it's 5.5, maybe not. So I don't want to make it seem like it's like a guarantee, and I don't even know what floods count, to be honest, but
I don't believe floods count.
yeah, but there were a handful of catastrophes, I guess. But to that point, to get a picture taken for $30,000 compared to how much time it would take to collect information about a catastrophe, even if we do have to pay for it, that doesn't seem terrible.
How about hail damage? Can it pick up?
Sure.
I've never.
They already have insurance, so they have them.
Because that's probably maybe the most common.
Okay, where are we?
Looking through cemetery fund, everybody is excited about that. Replacement of 0-2 turn mower in 2027 and a new track skidder in 2028. I think we get applied for a marathon grant for two cat, right? This would be the skid steer out there.
We did an addition there, taking out 160 that Eddie uses here. We'd be able to keep that here for him then.
Good point, Pam. A lot of times the department gets a highly used piece of equipment and then is retiring that piece of equipment. Normally a department that has a lesser frequent use for that equipment. Barb has a car that came from assessing or building inspection. Eddie has a skid steer from, I'm not sure where that one came from, how it works. Eddie and Justin now have that pickup. Granted, it's a 1996 from the water treatment plant that is leaps and bounds ahead of the truck that they were cobbling through. So a lot of this stuff, while we may not trade it in, we will pass it down to others that are not as critical or not as users. Looking into the half-cent sales tax, the amounts for PD vehicles in 2026, we're taking out of that 3 cents of the 5 cents. Those 3 vehicles, also the Pierce Humber truck replacement, 820,000 will be paid for out of those, and I think those items will certainly, there will be enough money in 2026 to pay for those. Right.
Looking.
Pretty close.
And I think we were estimating 1.2 to 1.3 million total. 60%.
Yes,
So again, a lot of.
yes,
We've also dropped in there, again, the next 5 years. For police and fire equipment out of that fund should be adequate funding. There to-
yes.
To those acquisitions. Water and sewer utility, again, a lot of replacement things. But again, a vehicle for new employee at the utility maintenance. Or that's usually a truck with a box for plastic.
Yes.
Federal utility fund, replacement, also the clarifier at the wastewater treatment plant. 225,000. Again, these are all our generally replacements other than the news and the yellow, I think, are the new stuff, right? Is that
The yellow
potentially
are the items that
Yeah.
may go away if we do the larger project.
Yeah, it's that stuff that would be avoided if we decided to approve the plan.
We've also got on here in 2026 the 4 million gallon reservoir, which is the 14th Street Southwest. It's got 15 years in now. Painting. So something like that.
On the, Ryan, on the controller improvements for 225, what we're doing this year, correct?
Yeah.
So 26, we moved it to 25.
Were there other problems surfacing that clarification you or?
Holding strong.
Okay.
Things are about to take off with the project. Some stuff has been installed by the Fetzer. Computer guys are coming in on Thursday. So, cool. Thanks.
When we talk about, we usually, I know Mayor Frederick asked about this a few meetings ago. What's our vehicle replacement policy? You'll see one on here that's replacing a 2007 Chevy at the water treatment plant. Placing that one in 2020. So we gave it 22 years. It's giving a lot of use of our vehicles. Whether that's the wisest thing to do, because I think everyone's always looking and adding up what are the ongoing repair and maintenance of those vehicles. It's a time to wait to replace. So any questions on water sewer utility fund outlays? Solid waste.
Water reservoir will be adjusted based on the prioritization that was done, because I thought it fell down.
I think we talked about maybe potentially moving that one later. Solid waste, again, roll off hook truck replacement. That is the truck that used for grass bin dumping, and also we found that using the roll offs for snow removal is a really big benefit. So we get multiple uses or year-round use of that vehicle. Usual roll-off box replacements in 2020-29, and be time to replace the steel wheel compactor in 2028. Street-related utility bucket truck replacement. F550 has been around quite a long time, so it's time to replace that. And generally, the street-light utility fund will have funds for which to make that replacement. Workman in public library, we've got the checkout system, 26. Not sure what the anytime lockers are for. The book will be a replacement.
The anytime lockers are actually, we can put books in them and people can access them. They can be outside, so they can access them 24/7. They can also put books back into.
So those.
Yes.
It's a summer of 5 years worth of stuff for personnel and equipment. I think we have a sheet. On the public facilities, kind of went over this last time, looking at Andrew and I had a conversation with an attorney with Crowley Fleck about getting a legal opinion on this facility. Because there's been questions on some folks are saying, yes, renovate it, others are saying tear it down, start new. But I think we need a legal opinion on a title opinion that says actually who owns the building, because the facility was constructed in 33, 34. I think it was put into kind of shorten this up in a trust between the county and the city, with the city as kind of the managing partner. And some of the language in that agreement indicates must be forever. So does forever mean forever and ever and ever and ever? 9 years is a long time for this facility to stand. So we're looking for, again, part of that legal opinion would be, can we, one of the options is tear down, build new on this site. Is that even possible under the conditions that this facility was built in 33, 34, or does it have to stay standing, and then therefore the option is we need to renovate? So like I said, we're trying to figure out if we can take one of those decisions off the board, take it off the board. If we have to keep this building and it can't be demoed, probably abandon it, I suppose, but I don't think that's the wisest.
Personally, I think parking.
Let's help solve some of our other issues of the day. But again, so we expect that work to be completed by May 31st, if not soon. So like I said, there's a lot of research that was done by former city attorney Dick Gallagher back in 1976, wrote an opinion that we want some verification if that still holds today. It didn't say whether you can or can't tear it down or renovate it. Just said, here's what they found. A lot of it is North Dakota session laws too. So
So are they gonna rebuild in 76, just been moving into next year?
yeah, I don't know. Should be, but if we were, again, to renovate, we're looking for request for qualifications for architect. Probably take construction manager at risk, draft plans, estimate cost, final design in 2026. Bid, we need to find a temporary location, move out, build, move back, occupy in potentially 2020. Probably still a realistic time frame up there. If we're tearing down, again, it's a request. We probably don't need an architect. We do need an architect to be coming up with plans to build on this site. I don't know if there is a better location than where we are right now. I think we want to stay here in this spot. Contributes to the downtown, and this is just the kind of work City Hall should be.
Does everyone have, there were plans, I can't remember how long it's been. Remember where this street out here was vacated?
Yep.
And we took control of the church area over here. Are those plans still applicable anyway? Or
There's a study we did in 2015, I think, along with the sports complex and things like that on what would, I think we had picked out what locations that were available at that time could you put City Hall at? Could you buy the church, tear the church down, build new there and do parking here? I don't think that's such a great idea. I really don't want to be the one to tear down the church. Just saying. We had conversations with the folks with the church at that time, and kind of said, the church was for sale at that time, said if you're interested in getting rid of your property, then you go ahead and take down the church and tell us how much you want for the property. I don't want to be the one that's tearing down the church.
Weren't they at that time, wasn't part of that plan for us to temporarily move out to on the west end there?
We talked about moving to the
Old,
old Hardview, the
yeah.
building, Team Challenge building. And we've been through those gyrations a lot.
Well,
I think that facility is used up now. I don't think that's a possibility. If we were to temporarily relocate, the best option might be the Lattiser building out east.
well, there's a strong emphasis to keep City Hall downtown.
So if we were to temporarily move out there, reconstruct or renovate this building, and then move back. that'll probably, there'd be enough room out there at 22,000 square feet, I believe, to make that move, and probably minimal rehabilitation out there to make it work for everyone. But that would be my take on that one. But again, to gut and redo this building is probably a 2-year construction project.
The only comment I make, things have changed in the last few years, actually, to where City Hall as a central place for a lot of people to come do business, they're not doing that anymore. A lot of it's online and, you don't have the need for pedestrian traffic in City Hall, which makes it more pertinent to be right here as opposed to the way things are going where maybe the location is not quite as important.
Still a good connection between kind of the government corridor with the City Hall, Fort County Law Enforcement Center, fire station. It's a nice cohesive. So there's some benefits to that, but I agree with you 100% that the utility bill pay and the online options that we have reduced traffic into this building quite a bit. COVID did that quite a bit. So we're getting more people on Smart Hub, I think, paying their utility bills online. The need for building permits and assessing, we still have a ton of people coming through here in January, February, March that are homestead tax credit and that physical help to do those things. So there's still need for that. Engineering and planning are both still very face-to-face driven.
So is your ballpark figure out what would be 10 million, 20 million?
The 2023 estimates on renovating this building were $13.5 million.
How much?
13.5, and that included the temporary lease, the
Temporary relocation, like that. So that's kind of like the whole gamut.
Yeah, so what you would see, this is just kind of anecdotal, would be the square footage that we have in this building is bigger than we could afford to build new. So if we were to renovate it, we would end up with a larger building than if we were to spend 13.5 on a new building. We would basically build a building that fits us now in a little wiggle room, but not years of wiggle room, for example. The plans, to your point, we monitored foot traffic and departmental needs, and the plans for the renovation at least kind of call for more meeting space in the building and less of an emphasis on drop-in visitors for permits and pay bills and things like that. So you would see in the proposed plans that more of it is focused on that collaborative working space. We still have a lot of folks who want to meet in person. Sometimes it can be difficult between the 2, maybe 3 meeting rooms we have in the building. Spaces that work and technology that we need.
Well, it'd be a good retirement gift for Jim, not good in New City Hall, isn't it?
So I haven't really got a feel of this building yet. Are we using the top 2 floors in?
The second floor, the gymnasium portion, and the office portion we used during COVID to split assessing and building inspection up, so they weren't all crammed in one space. That seemed to work out well. The gymnasium upstairs, PD is using it for their cadet training, using it for some canine training, and using it for drone flights, flying through hula hoops and things like that up there. So it is seeing use. We have a number of employees that are going up. We're about several employees that are wearing time that we're walking circles along the track. Or not around the track, but they're walking circles. Gym. So it's utilized, I won't say to a great extent, but it's nice to have that extra room. Even the PD comes in and brings out their mats and their dummies and they fight each other. They tase each other up there and things like that. So it's a drop area for them.
Have you been up there before? No. Yeah, because I would generally hesitate to do it for the public up there.
Yeah.
So well, another story.
So the plans typically, like let's say the May 6th City Commission if as many people show up as they say they're gonna show up, we will not have adequate space. Represented in front of. If we have a small student district bursting at students, these people feel like they feel entitled to be able to be in the same room as you guys, a lot of times. So the plans did call for the gym to become the commission chamber, that could kind of be a flex space and also kind of expanded for your hearings. And then kind of keeping most of the offices downstairs, moving people against the walls that have windows so that the commission room that we always shut the blinds in can be in the middle of the building. Then have some offices on the south side as well.
I'm just kind of blowing a lot of hot air here, but I don't know that this site could be large enough to bring the police department and the municipal court back under one roof. Is that even an option?
So the recent facilities assessment did not get into that, where it was primarily for the city hall function in the building. I don't think that we would be able to have both the adequately sized commission room, the meeting spaces necessary, and bring in another 40 employees.
6
Yeah, well, you're building a 100-year building. So you can't build it here today.
So yeah, we would have a little bit of extra space. The plans called out an office for a city attorney, should the city ever have a full-time attorney, which I think it's reasonable to assume necessary in the horizon. But no, with the fleet parking and things like that, I don't think it would be just not enough possible. I mean, this is the venue for it, but the design that this building has is not replaceable with architects and contractors in our area. It's irreplaceable. So if we lose it in town forever, it won't come back. It will look different. It will look like every other town. And this is something that we have that's unique.
I was just thinking if something would happen in the county, exponential growth or something outside of our ETA area, or we're going to get bounced out of municipal court, get bounced out of county courthouse, and maybe even law enforcement center.
We've done, so the steps we've taken have been at a cursory structural review we paid for this year, or in 2025, or 2024. You're all right. If we were to expand and renovate this building, do you think the pillars and the columns in the exterior would be sufficient to hold things up? And the answer was yes. So that was kind of first step. Granted, so they used to hold Bismarck Mandan basketball games, graduation, dances, parties, pick your favorite upstairs. I'm sure these walls could talk and the ceilings could talk about all the things that happened in here. A lot of people were upstairs at the same time. So I think, again, column structures are sturdy. If you wanted to take half of the gymnasium area, we'll get you on the grand tour and build a second level up. We've got the third story, build another level above the existing gym, take half of it, go up by half. We could make accommodations that would do. But again, it's a matter of, we have a lot of space in this building. A lot of it is really tired, and it doesn't function well in today's world. But again, looking out for another, till 2133 or whatever, it would be 200 years old. We're almost 100 years old today. So can you get it there?
Thanks.
So again, two options. We'll know more at the end of May on what we can do. First, let's find out if structurally we think this is okay. Structurally, find out if it's okay. Two would be, is it ours and is it our decision on what to do with this building, or do we have to involve the county commission in vision of this facility, because a lot of county offices used to occupied. this building. So there's an American Legion piece of it too. That good stuff, but I think their 99-year lease is coming up. I don't know what the 99-year lease is, but it's referenced in the agreements. So also in public facilities, we've got fire stations. So if we looking, Mitch and I kind of work backwards on this, we're looking to occupy in 2029. This year we would kind of select a location. We've got a location in mind on Old Ridge Trail where the communications tower is with guy wires, but I think there needs to be a more in-depth analysis. Is that the right location? I think it is, but the communications tower there, does it make sense to, we don't want the communications tower falling down.
Coverage purposes, though, we kind of have to be out there in that area.
Coverage purposes, that is a pretty prime location because you're right along Old Ridge Trail. If Northern Bridge Corridor, I don't think the Northern Bridge Corridor will be built. However, if you, where you turn on, I think it's 38, go to the water treatment plant. If you go left, that would be the route moving up to Old Red Trail, and this location would be close to that, so you'd be relatively easier move down into the Belonge property, and you'd be right on the major thoroughfare going out west. It still leaves the Plainview area, the idle area, as kind of looking 20, 30 years down the road as being, that's a tough spot to serve out there. But again, in 2025, if we nail down a location, and also make sure that the abstract on that property is updated and built there, that'd be good. Advertise, review, select architect and a civil engineering firm to get on board, do some preliminary designs in 2026, 2027, final design, later 2027, do the bid, 2027 to 2029 build, and later probably 2029. So that's, said they very rough. Review of a whole bunch of other steps that happen, but in the meantime, but questions on whether it's capital outlay, facilities. He is pretty crammed over there right now. County obviously bought the Baruby building. They plan on doing that. The intention was either to utilize some of it or tear it down as an expansion policy for the LEC. So who the sheriff is, depends on who the Warren County Commission are at that point. Really, it seems to make a lot of sense that the sheriff and PD are the same facility and help each other out, which they do now. Separating the two makes that a little more challenging.
I think you're too optimistic, Jim.
But
with that, what's our next step here?
with that, I think from a standpoint of what I think the budget and finance committee kind of need would be, are there priorities in here that you want to see? Are there, probably get into this more at the May 27th meeting, but if there's a funding offer, if there's a funding option out there that we laid out earlier, such as, do you, if paying for these projects, personnel and equipment, if you're saying we're already dipping into sales tax to the tune of 75% of what we collect, we don't want to go any further with that. If we say we're not interested in peeling off revenue from our utility funds, whether it's landfill, whether it's streetlight utility, whether it's water and sewer utility. If there are some hard no's, then that kind of tells the budget finance committee we've got to find some other sources to do that. I don't think any of those revenue sources are particularly off the table right now. But if there are any that you think are off the table, you need to let us know. If there are priorities in the personnel world, we look at I want to throw, the easiest one that comes to mind is fire, right? So if we're gonna, if we potentially would be fully staffed in 2026 with firefighters, we're not gonna be occupying a new station until 2029 or 2030. Question would be, I think it's wise to ramp up with firefighters to get there, so we're ready to go in 2030. That station's open. We've got enough personnel to do that. Yeah, another option is you hire 15 new firefighters in 2029 to get them trained up for 2030 and ready to go. That might be an impossibility, just from a training and personnel standpoint. We think the way it's presented here is the proper way to do it, that you can step in and say, but I think ramping up to get to that point. Or the commission may say, you know, we build it and then we filled it last time. You know, it took us how many years now? 2009 till 2026. We will be fully staffed at the Lakewood station.
2027.
Okay, 2027. We've heard some comments that, hey, you got a fire station down here. How long? Why did it take you so long to get to a fire half a block away? We're not fully staffed. John Q. Public sees that and they think you're fully staffed to build a station. So I think it's logical to ramp up to a point where you are operating out of a station versus the way we did. The way we did it is the way we did it, but there might be some philosophical differences on the different side.
For the fire chief, you know, you have a fire department, you have people in everybody that just can't sit around all day waiting for fires. I used to be a fireman. But, you know, the thing about it is if you're going to have these number of people, that you have them doing other services that can halfway justify having that many people, whether it be going out doing bar inspections, fire, whatever have you. But, you know, you just can't have firemen just sitting around waiting for fire either.
Yeah, a lot of that's in the movies. Firemen sitting on, I assure you that our firefighters work.
Well, I'm just saying with added on that you have, otherwise, you don't want to, put it this way, you don't want the job to get boring for them, and you want to have them doing other services that are of value to the community.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, they're busy training, running medical calls and inspections. Or and reports almost done. Make sure that's
That's okay, just, you know,
I think we've got a backlog of building inspections to do even at current staffing levels. So
I think maybe to break it down into bite-sized pieces, maybe step one here, what we're looking for is consensus on, do we need station 3? And is that the right timeline in your opinion? Because that helps answer a lot of the new equipment and new personnel questions, or maybe that's the big one that we could start with. See if there's consensus that is programmed out right here, then we can move on to the rest.
well, the thing that's obvious, I've been around the city for a long time, is you have something you need to do, the more you push it off, the more it's gonna cost. I mean, and you're talking about a lot more costs. Look at what happened in Memorial Highway out here. We started in $15 million, and it's up to $100 million. Same way with the city hall and the fire department. The more we keep pushing this thing down and don't do anything, the more it's potentially going to increase in cost. I mean, that's a dilemma we have to face as well.
We can't have any motions here regarding this.
I think, yeah, I like Justin's comment on if the commission is consensus, if we're thinking a fire station is one of those things that we need to have ready to go by 2029, 2030. There are things that need to happen with staffing that, getting reasonable staffing level on that, then that answers several questions.
How would you like to address that consensus? How do you want to?
I think we would present that as this would be a priority.
Well, we're already putting the sewer trunk line in up there, classified rough riders, we have to put sales places for whatever. You know, looking at updating the sewer lines and changing over the trail around. I mean, that's been bumped out, I think, like 5 years. But it's coming. And it's coming and be prepared. Reference fire station. Now, the other thing you gotta remember is to address wastewater. I'm sorry, you know, are we gonna be having to look at wastewater, revamp in here, or are we gonna do it piece by piece, year by year, as articulated in the yellow here?
This message,
That's $150 million hit, right?
Mayor, maybe to address your concern, if the message is that the third fire station in the western quadrant of Mandan is a priority, take the steps necessary to get there by 2020, 2030 or 2029, and I'm seeing head nods that seems to be a priority.
Okay.
We'll follow through with that. That fair, Justin and Greg?
Mhm.
If you have another, we can talk about public facilities, St. Paul, I think with recent, we'll know more after in May than what we can do here, but I think my opinion, City Hall is a priority. We do have some funding set aside on the mediation trust side that we use to pay for maybe half of this project. I think that would be a priority.
Just add that to the city has the option to apply for grant funds, and we sort of need to know how much of a priority it is to dedicate time to apply.
Would you like a formal
Seeing some head nods on that one too, and these will come back to you for motions and approvals and things like that. If there's anything new, the easiest way to do it is, are there things in here that you think in 2026 that can be moved, that you would say are, everything's a priority here because I think all departments have identified items as needs. So
Yeah, maybe the easiest question would be, does anybody feel strongly that what has been presented isn't the need and the timeline that it's been presented?
More than likely, some of the things that are probably set for 2029, 2030, by the time we actually figure out the fiscal piece of this, could easily see some of these items go from 2029 or 2030 to 2031, 2032, 2033. Not that they fall off the map, but that our 5-year plan starts to evolve into that, beyond the 5 years, just because of fiscal constraints.
What's the increase here, Greg?
Pardon me?
What's the 2026 increase of now over 25? Yeah. Percentage wise, number wise, what is the increase over 25?
I don't have the 2025 number in front of me. I have a revised number, but I don't have the original budget in front of me.
So for personnel, the 2026 total is 875,000.
Yep.
Capital outlay total is just short of 2.5 million.
So 3.2 million increase on
39 million. Budget this week.
All funds combined, including capital outlay, it's pretty close.
So 11%.
general fund is where we're going to be capped at. And right now, looking at general fund in 2026, personnel are 215,000. Total personnel 875,000. We are capped at. Again, general fund is really police fire. Still about $700,000. police, fire, and other personnel.
But the city's also projected to have an unreserved fund balance above and beyond our minimum reserves. The end of 2025 of about $5.5 million.
So in the progress of this, the ask tonight is there consensus that these are needs that you want to see the financial model for?
Right.
And then you can decide, we'll present, okay, this is what we can afford with the current revenue structure. Here are additional revenue options. Do you want to explore those, or do we want to start making any deductions or longer out than 5 years?
Something's had long-term costs, now you put it in play now, but you pay later too.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It does stop where the initial purchase this, things that fall through later on, it can cost a lot too.
The methodology that Justin and I are working with is that the priority, placed in the finance department, can't speak for the mayor and Jim, but our thought would be that first priority is to maintain our current level of service, meaning that we fund salaries and benefits, operations, and along with it, replacing the existing fleet over time. The next step then is to look at the committed infrastructure that the city is obligated to upgrade and repair, things that are already under contract, things that are already committed to, things that the city has probably a regulatory requirement to take care of, lead service lines, things of that nature. That would be the next bite of the apple. Then would come, let's say, personnel additions that are above and beyond our current staffing. And also for new equipment that's not part of the existing fleet. So that would kind of be at the bottom. That's kind of how we see it as far as the priority of where the money gets allocated. But that's just our thought. Perhaps Jim and the mayor may have some different methodologies there, but that's what we perceive might be how the funds get applied. Not negating the public buildings. You know, if the goal, the priority is to have a fire station in 2030. Certainly all the staffing that is required to get staffing for station number 2 and then number 3, that kind of follows that whole package. So if the Northwest Fire Station is a priority, so then is the staffing to get number 2 fully staffed, and then finally number 3 when station 3 is ready to go online.
Yeah, if station 3 is not, then we could stop at 27.
Yep. So that's what we perceive in the finance department as kind of the funding order of things.
And then that would be, we'd be able to say, okay, that these step 1 items can be funded with existing revenue structure. These additional items, these are the levers that would have to be pulled for additional revenue to get there. Do you want to pull those levers?
Right.
But before we programmed them in, we just wanted to hear, is anybody in disagreement that something's a need?
Right.
I open it up. What's a need and what's a want? If there's wants in here, by all means, pull them right now.
The fact that when I retire and request to go from 40 hours to 24, that could be bold. Because I would then be done when I reach the age 62, and then I could sail away. So that is discretionary. But then the city has to decide whether the value of retaining my experience is needed or not. But it's not like a requirement. So that could be pulled.
Okay, so is it need or would be nice to have?
Sometimes that's a matter of opinion.
Need or is it nice to have?
Jim,
Yes, sir.
What would you say?
it depends on who we hire in that position to replace that individual. So again, it's sitting here today. It takes us 6 months to hire that position. It's a need.
But what I can tell you is that I'm pouring as much as I can into Justin. So if something were to happen to me, I would feel confident that Justin could easily pick up where I left off. That is my goal, is to ensure that happens by the time that I'm done. So
Okay, so if you run the 26 as is with all requests and the not on the fire station, the building, not and not. Can you give us that number at the next meeting?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. We're gonna have,
So then if we're underwater,
if we're underwater, and you're gonna know this beforehand, because you're gonna be on the committee, even reviewing this before it even, because you're part of the Budget and Finance Committee. You're one of the members. But if we see that we're underwater, then here would be the other funding options. That would be presentable.
okay, so are we in agreement, run the 26 as presented?
See what levers we need to pull.
Yeah.
To make this happen. So if we say we're gonna come back, we need to do a 15% increase in your water and sewer bill, 10% increase in your landfill bill, 7% increase in your streetlight utility to make this work as presented.
Yes.
And then we'll decide and we'll bring those again, but the finance committee can work on those and then decisions on. If you want to, it's a 15% increase in your water bill. Too much. We're doing a rate analysis right now that should be done. I think we need some of this information and some of the infrastructure information to do that, but we can do that.
And we have
There's nothing that
templates
you
built.
say looks in here and says, nope, this is absolutely no go.
Templates are all built so we can do all the years and show where we're at.
Right.
Each year.
Okay.
We'll take that as a direction. Is that correct, Justin?
What's that?
Is that, you guys okay?
Yep.
Is that? Yep. Any questions from anybody else?
Kind of unrelated, but related. When does this start in the sports complex bond come off? Or what is there?
Potentially 2027, 2020.
So
We're
we're
talking a
talking
plan,
Yeah.
we'd probably say we'll take 1% and we'll apply it to the wastewater plant. All right, there wouldn't be any money for anybody else, and that gets you maybe half of your wastewater treatment plant increase paid for.
What does that process look like that to secure that?
That's a whole.
right.
And those are some of the things that will have the recommendations on.
Right.
So that 1% over 30 years would maybe get a $78, $80 increase in your wastewater, just your wastewater plant bill, maybe down to 50 a month. Right. That's using all of that 1%.
Right now, Parks gets full 1%, right? Three quarters.
Three-quarter.
And that expires, or that goes away, when that bond is paid off.
Is there any talk at the legislature that we can't make this through sales tax, or sales tax is capped for city use?
There were discussions about capping the amount of local sales tax that could be imposed, say limited to 3. But those bills have not seen light of day. So I don't think there's a big appetite on capping sales tax. Or the amount of percents that cities can levy, or cities can put sales tax on.
But you had, Jim, when you had asked if there's any funds that should not be touched, right? I mean, at this point, I think we have to consider everything with the cap of the 3%, right? So.
Yeah, I throw that out there as a if there's something that you all feel strongly about, say, we want water and sewer utility fund to pay for water and sewer utility items only. And that's kind of what we've done for many years, except we've had to dip in a couple times to do that. And if you tell us that now, it takes that piece of revenue stream off the table. We think we're gonna need it, so I don't want it taken off the table, but it's a matter of if the commission says we don't, this is a no-go.
As far as our base operations for long-term, we are drawing 10% transfer from the water and sewer fund into the general fund, just to help the base operations. But we're not pulling anything from solid waste or the streetlight utility.
And statutorily, you can pull
Up to 20% of the gross revenues.
And there's communities that do that. I think Fargo used to, I don't know if they still do, but I think Fargo was feeling 20% off their utility fund to keep the number of meals that they levy lower. Which in turn drives your, might lower your property tax a bit, but your utility bill. It's a balance, balance.
What's coal? What are you gonna find coal?
3%.
And this was based on
And
3% COLA.
It's big and bulk on the insurance right now, right? Saying it's gonna even out, but could come in at 16 again.
I figured 3% COLA, 10% insurance year over year, 5% equipment inflation per year.
We also have an escalator, 5% growth in sales tax collections, and 2% increase in O&M expenses.
Yeah.
So we've applied escalators where we feel are necessary, just to be conservative.
Jim, can you give our just brief refresher, maybe on the 22nd, on what efforts are going to need to be done to be able to use send sales tax for?
I think the commission could, again, the commission could amend the language of the initiated measure to add emergency services salaries in there. The thought is that we would want to make sure that the sponsoring committee of that initiated measure was okay with that before we do it, so we don't end up with a knuckle mashing. Since right now there seems to be some knuckle mashing between the transit authority and the city of Bismarck's committee on who's going to control what gets funded and who, if the city of Bismarck that now will control when this money goes to transit, how it's worked, or who's in control of what actually happens in transit. So we don't necessarily, because some of the sponsoring committee members are also transit members, we want to make sure we're on good standing with them. So I don't think they would have an issue with it, but I don't want to go there and have them say absolutely not. That was not the intent of that language.
And it's a simple majority vote.
From the commission, I think we need 2/3.
I thought it said simple, but.
We would check, but the commission could vote to change that, whether it's 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5.
Right.
But commission could change that.
And no vote for public.
And no vote for public. Which, again, the issue is we want to make sure we're on good terms with that sponsoring committee, because if they want to go get signatures again, come back and say, this is not what we intended this for. So.
I would think that as long as their thought is separate.
Yep.
It would be fine with them, but
I think so too, but I
Yeah.
have been, it's been a interesting road with them so far.
commissioners want to nod.
I don't think I think we are going to look at that. They can say, if we want to do it, we will look at it.
That would be helpful for your purposes.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a transit meeting this Thursday, I believe, that I'll be going to, and,
Don't bring it up there, please.
no, I'm just gonna say, in case they bring it up, I'm not gonna say anything.
No, we have not shared with them plans to use this money for funding because remember, it also affects vehicles, equipment, or affects vehicle purchases and buildings. So if you start taking money out of that account to start funding salaries for new positions created at, say, after 2025, or building your ability to fund vehicles, any buildings moves down the line. So there's a yin and the yang to everything. Not that we couldn't go in and finance it's a police station or fire station, but it just stretches those funds out for a longer period of time. If we're now pulling money out of those coffers for that. And I would expect City Hall accessibility, we could easily look at things like what's an elevator going to cost to put on this, but that would be an easy $1-2 million. What would you can put a lot of things in accessibility as your lighting, things like that could be paid for out of this fund. So again, it's a good source of revenue. Glad we have it, but there's a lot of things that could come out of it too.
We good?
Yeah. We're good. We're good.
Next time.
Anything else? The future meeting dates, Tuesday, May 6th at 5:30. Regular meeting, so to speak. Tuesday, May 20th at 5:30, regular meeting. Tuesday, June 30th, or June 3rd. 5:30.
May 20th.
We'll add the May 27th.
27th.
Yep. We'll make sure you're all in there.
Available. May 27th, 5:30, special meeting.
I'll be zooming the meeting until May.
Okay, and again, Tuesday, June 3rd at 5:30, regular meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.